We are now entering the brave new world of smart meters. That means your electric meter will do so much more than just show how much electricity you use. The new smart meters are watching you. They sense all kinds of goings on. They see when you turn something on or off. They see how many watts your electric toothbrush pulls. They send the record of that little event over wireless networks, bouncing through your neighbor's smart meters all the way to the power company, where they keep record of all your electric consumption volumes and patterns every minute of every day, and store that data forever on computers that you'll never get to see. That data shows when you are at home, shows when you're sleeping, shows when you're on vacation, when you have visitors, when you use a lamp, a power tool, some extra computers, and if you look like you're running a business out of your home. It even senses when you bootleg energy off the grid. Your smart meter data shows a vivid profile of your personal living patterns and whether or not you were at home on the night of the murder. This is not electrical metering. This is personal surveillance. This is a search without a warrant every day. This is your personal private life going straight out through your electric meter to the power company, to the government, to the police, to the insurance company, to anyone who cuts a deal with your power company to look at your life under a microscope. Sorry, it's actually worse than that. People who don't cut a deal can get your information too by simply intercepting the wireless signal spewing from the side of your house. Yes, smart meters are radio transmitters. Here's how you tell. This one is a 1-watt radio station licensed by the FCC. On this all-news radio station, every detail of your electrical life is shooting off to some institutional data center somewhere. Already, the police in Ohio, Texas, British Columbia, and places I don't know about are regularly using smart meter data to pinpoint marijuana grow houses, enforce business licenses, and punish people for doing things in the privacy of their own homes that you were not supposed to do, but they wouldn't even know you were doing if they weren't spying on you. Your power company apparently gets to sell your personal life story to whomever it wants. Any unusual power consumption pattern is considered probable cause to raid you for growing marijuana or running a computer server without a business license. This is about as big brother as it gets. Those friendly men with their truckload of smart meters are going door to door with something a little different than a Christmas carol. My personal opinion is that you and I need to demand that these things be taken off our homes. It is not possible for your power company to claim they have the right to install a surveillance device on your house. Smart meters are no different from wiretapping devices. And in case you didn't know, wiretapping is illegal in all 50 of the states and the federal territories. If you let your power company put a smart meter on your house, you may as well walk around all day with a Facebook helmet webcam pointed at yourself. They have convinced themselves installing smart meters is lawful by some reaching to the moon jive called implied consent. If you say they can change your meter, they pretend you consent even when you don't know really what they're doing. Here's a tip. Tell them they can't change your meter. They had no trouble billing you with the old meter. If you send them a notice by certified mail that they may not install a smart meter or any other surveillance device on your house, their implied consent goes out the window. I would do that if I were you. In fact, I did that, and I'm not even you. You can see a copy of my letter in the drop-down next to this video. You can copy and paste that into your word processor. Make sure and change the info into your own info. The post office will give you the certified mail slip. Those friendly guys on the sidewalk told me that they plan to put a smart meter on every house in America. If they do that, it will no longer be America.
were to spell TWA, what would that sound like?
Of course, Bo Putnam, South Support. There's been a couple.
Electronic utility meters represent criminal trespass by your utility company if that meter is installed on your property without your consent and without full disclosure. Of course, we all know about that brand of meter with the initials S and M, but I'm using the generic name electronic utility meter so the people I'm calling criminals can't sue me. The utility industry has a record of attacking their accusers. Yes, they are criminals, for not one, but at least 4 different reasons: radiation, fire hazard, dirty electricity, and surveillance. All of those things violate the law or cause damage to your health, safety, or rights, and your electronic utility meter does all of those things. I'm going to give you full and clear information establishing the criminal malfeasance of your utility company staff and their friends, and I have some solutions for you. Utility companies like to pull some cute tricks when you accuse them of committing those 4 different crimes represented by electronic utility metering. They like to bully and intimidate the customer who complains of their crimes. Typical of the guilty criminal, they like to threaten those who complain. So they threaten their customers with extra fees and shut off of their electric service when the customer objects to criminal trespass with unsafe and unlawful utility metering. Bullying and intimidation do not constitute rebuttal to an allegation. And even denial is not sufficient in a criminal complaint. The crime must be remedied, or the allegation must be rebutted with fact, law, and evidence. The criminal must have an alibi, and your utility company does not have that, so they change the subject. They accuse the victim of being the bad guy. Your utility company will not rebut allegations of committing surveillance, radiation, dirty electricity, and fire hazard on your property because those things have all been shown to be true, and to deny them would be perjury. Some of those violations are even admitted in the utility company literature, as if by publishing those violations as utility company policy, they would no longer be crimes. Sometimes when you file a complaint of the 4 crimes, they deny one and ignore the rest. It is important to remember to never drop any allegations simply because your utility company fails to respond to the allegation. Failure to rebut an allegation is an admission of guilt under the law by the principle referred to as acquiescence by silence. There are 4 different crimes, and your utility company, their employees and executives, are very likely guilty of all of them if they are guilty of the one crime of installing the electronic meter on your home. There are instructions and templates for filing a complaint in the form of a notice of liability at emfhelpcenter.com on the home page, center column, under the title Solutions. The only way your utility company is not guilty of criminal wrongdoing is if they are offering you a no-cost option for a traditional electromechanical meter, the kind your grandma had. Never use the term analog meter when requesting safe and lawful metering. The utilities misuse the term analog to refer to an electronic meter that does not transmit as much as another meter. So they have redefined the word analog in order to lie to their customers. The analog meters they offer you are nearly always electronic meters and usually are just about as harmful and dangerous as any other electronic utility meter. Because the problem of unsafe and unlawful utility metering spans all states of the Union, I will not refer to any law of any single state. I will cite federal law and constitutional law, but you will find that most of the laws and violations I cite are also covered in state statutes, state constitutions. So both criminal and civil actions can be generally brought against utility companies and their executives in both state and federal courts, depending on which violations you may choose to report. The first laws that utility companies and their executives are breaking are the Fourth Amendment of the Bill of Rights for privacy invasion and Title 18 United States Code sections 2511, 2512, and 2518. That title is called the Electronic Communications Privacy Act. That act provides for criminal and civil penalties, including punitive awards to the victim. That victim would be any utility customer whose house or office has had an electronic utility meter installed at any time. Nearly every electronic utility meter made since the year 2000 is an unlawful surveillance device because it collects highly personal data on time of day or daily usage of electricity from the utility customer. Advanced utility meters, as they are called, process, store, transmit, and commercially exploit highly personal data about the lives and living habits of you, your family, and your guests. They do this whether or not the meter transmits wirelessly. By looking at your meter surveillance data, utility companies can identify appliances and devices and make record of each time they are turned on and off. They associate this data with the names of the account holder and occupant and build a personal dossier on the activities and personality types in the household. The utility companies have sophisticated computer systems, software, and algorithms which profile occupants of the house in behavioral and demographic categories for the purpose of commercial and legal exploitation of that data. Anyone who is complicit in the installation of those utility meters is a criminal under the law. The way that utility surveillance data is collected leads to a string of separate and additional criminal acts. One of those is fire hazard. Traditional electromechanical meters were very reliable and robust devices with heavy surge protection, which is necessary due to the random occurrence of grid line surges, which can suddenly shoot as much as 20,000 volts into your service panel, which can easily destroy your appliances, set fire to your home, and even electrocute occupants. Electronic utility meters have no surge protectors. This seems insane, and any electrical engineer can tell you that it is insane. But the engineers who design electronic utility meters are apparently insane. They seem to believe that putting your family's lives at risk is a small price to pay for some juicy lifestyle data on you and your family. The components of the surveillance device that meter manufacturers put in their utility meters are made up of delicate electronics and circuits which are flammable, which cannot withstand a 1,000-volt grid line surge, much less a 20,000-volt surge. Under no stretch of reasoning do electronic devices belong in a place where there are high voltage surges. 5 or 10,000 volts is enough to explode any electronic utility meter into flames. This does burn down houses and kill people. Electronic utility meters have burned tens of thousands of homes in the last 10 years. In Stockton, California alone, 5,000 meters burned up one day when a truck hit a utility pole. And yet, the utility companies still put no surge protectors in the meters for a very strange reason. The surge protector simply does not work if the voltage surge is that close to the electronic surveillance device. Even with a surge protector, the electronic meter will explode in flames, whereas a traditional electromechanical meter without any electronics inside would not. You see, the surveillance device is in the circuit of the home, and a flameout is inevitable in a grid line surge. This is reckless and gross negligence at the very best, and intentional public endangerment and terrorism at its worst. The omission of surge protectors from utility meters and the inclusion of flammable components in those meters is violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 1365, tampering with consumer products in a way to cause danger of death or bodily injury. That federal code calls for prison time for any such tampering and stronger sentences for those who actually do cause bodily injury or death. That would be the policy-making executives at your utility company. The utility meter is a consumer product when it is installed on a private home, and it is tampered with by omission of the surge protector, and that tampering has caused bodily injury and death. On the lack of surge protection alone, the installation of these meters is a serious and punishable crime. Federal laws on arson only apply to federal property and lands, so look up arson laws in your state and local statute and codes and add that to your legal citations along with Title 18 U.S. Code. If your electronic utility meter ever catches on fire, it is arson, not to mention gross negligence, because your utility company executives have known about the fire hazard problem for as long as electronic utility meters have existed. Now we get to the practice of installing a radio transmitter on private property without consent. For starters, that violates FCC regulations, and the utility company is subject to those regulations every time they register and license a transmitting utility meter. Go to www.fcc.gov and click on For Consumers to file a complaint about an FCC licensed radio transmitter being installed on your property without your consent. To get a federal bureaucracy to actually take action may take a lot of complaints, but think how many people are being violated by electronic utility meters. Let's get those complaints in. At least we will see whose side the FCC is on. Of course, those radio frequencies are not good for living things, people included. The RF signals are powerful enough to penetrate buildings, so your body doesn't stand a chance. I have taken thousands of calls from people who got sick when their electronic utility meters were installed. They complain of insomnia, memory loss, inability to concentrate, fatigue, mood alterations, damaged relationships, skin problems, even cancer and heart attacks. Any transmitting electronic utility meter can shut off a pacemaker with no warning at all. At emfhelpcenter.com, you can contact us for general assistance and basic solutions to many of these issues. And we also have contacts for building biologists who are certified technical experts in electromagnetic frequency environmental pollution if you want a comprehensive inspection and report on the safety of your home or office. Last but not least are electric transients, also called dirty electricity. This is very important to understand because some people who think that radio frequencies are affecting their health are actually being affected by dirty electricity. Here's how and why your utility company made dirty electricity a problem. Your utility company needs to power the surveillance device in the utility meter they gave you. To do that, the company has to steal some electricity from you. And yes, you pay for that electricity on your bill for power that does nothing but run the surveillance device that spies on you and your family. The way they steal that electricity from you is with one of those flammable electronic devices in your meter called a switching mode power supply. This little device is very disrupting to the current coming into your home. It's like putting a stick in a stream. It creates turbulence in the current flow. And this damages your appliances and makes people sick with dirty electricity broadcasting from all of the house wiring. So you're not safe from this anywhere in the house. It does not matter where the utility meter is. These electric fields can project up to 8 feet from any part of your house wiring right into your living spaces. This dirty electricity is especially disruptive to sleep and causes any number of health issues for people who are exposed for long periods. Cancer has been clearly associated with exposure to dirty electricity by many peer-reviewed and published scientific studies. Luckily, this can usually be fixed with an electric line conditioner, a device installed by your service panel and an investigation of your house wiring by an experienced electrician who can fix any wiring problems that might also be causing dirty electricity. Details of these solutions are on emfhelpcenter.com. If you suspect that electric fields may be a problem in your house, when you go to bed, shut off any of your breaker circuits that go to or through your bedroom for a few nights and see if your sleep improves. As I mentioned before, utility companies are typically very unreasonable and even hostile when they are asked to correct these problems. We have found over and over that customer service people are trained to lie and bully their customers in order to force their surveillance meters onto people's homes. We have now found that people have little success when they attempt to replace their own meters in order to force the utility company into legal compliance. That surveillance data is very valuable, and it turns out that the utility companies have no reason to obey the law because the police and courts are so ignorant, corrupt, or incompetent that literally no utility company executive or employee has been prosecuted for the violation and crimes I have pointed out in this video, which have been committed now literally millions of times. One might ask the question, where exactly is our Justice Department these days? They seem to have no trouble assisting utility companies in enforcing company policies for which they happen to have no jurisdiction whatsoever, but not for crimes when they violate us. When the people who are supposed to be protecting society simply choose not to do so, we have to be very careful and thoughtful not to antagonize that protected monopoly, the utility company, which is enjoying their criminal violation of our health, safety, rights, and privacy with impunity. We have this very dangerous situation where we must be under contract with criminals who have the privilege and incentive to do us harm and are doing so without restraint. So we have updated and changed the recommended strategies to deal with this very unfortunate situation. At emfhelpcenter.com, we have free download documents, templates, and links, detailed step-by-step information to provide solutions and keep you out of trouble, and a limited selection of key products that you may want to help you get the job done. As time permits, we receive and return phone calls if you need more personal help. Contacts are on that webpage. If you work for a utility company, we will be glad to advise you on how to come into compliance with the law on your metering policies. Of course, the first step is issuing a purchase order for a large number of electromechanical meters. Once you do that, the rest is very easy. Simply give one to anyone who asks for it, as the law requires. You'll save a lot of money, too, because the electromechanical meters are very inexpensive, and they don't require computer and data transmission infrastructure. You're still charging us to read the meters on site, so that should not be a problem. But I'm sure your customers will be happy to report the readings if you don't feel like sending out your meter readers. But for the rest of us, let us wish for a day when we will have a world without electronic utility meters, when we will no longer have to hassle with criminal misconduct by our utility companies and a complicit justice system. Have you heard? The world is overpopulated, and we need to fix that. Luckily, some billionaires have decided to develop some solutions for us, make plans for us without consulting us, secretly developed plans by unelected planners with undisclosed agendas. Why are we listening to these people? There's evidence that we have already caused world population to level off, and in some cases, like in Japan, even start to fall. If you're looking at the big picture, the simplistic notion that population is the problem, maybe it would make sense to just find ways to kill a lot of people, roll out a nice parade of pandemics, famines, wars, and just enough nukes until you get to that population sweet spot. But the downside would be that the billionaire globalist elitists who come up with that plan would then have to spend a few generations in their bug-out bunkers in New Zealand, and they might get tired of watching the same 10,000 movies over and over. The good news is that the apocalypse may not be necessary. It is actually not the population that is the problem. The problem is that our system forces the population to use toxic chemicals, plastic, pesticides, solvents, all those nasty industrial materials that they have decided are necessary to improve our lives. They plunder our natural resources, cram our stores full of toxic junk, and then blame us for destroying the planet as they fixate on the idea of depopulation. So, do they have any actual plan? Exactly what problem are they trying to solve? The billionaires say they want to save the environment, but when they fly around in private jets, making billions of dollars selling oil, plastic, and pesticides, I'm sorry, they're not trying to save the environment. Let's be honest. Billionaires are super entitled people who want everything for themselves. They would like to tidy up the world by getting rid of all those messy people. They have an irresistible urge to bring order to things because they can afford to do that. To them, the world is too messy. It is very hard for most of us to imagine what it's like for one person to have $200 billion, to have enough money and power to tidy up a large part of the world. This leads to some very strange things happening. Maybe that billionaire is a racist, and he thinks that dark-skinned people should have no babies. That's how he wants to tidy up the world and bring order to things. He can easily come up with some fake vaccination program, tell people they're getting malaria shots when they're actually getting sterility drugs injected into them. Oh yes, we saw that happen, didn't we? So wealthy people can create foundations, influence academic science, influence governments, literally own and control media. They can control everything you see and hear because they simply have that much money. Whatever they might want to tidy up, they can do it. Money does not have a life of its own. The person who has the money is determining what the money does. Maybe one person, one troubled brain, is controlling the appropriation of $200 billion. Unfortunately, billionaires are human, so they never blame themselves for the mistakes they make or the problems they cause. They blame us for the damage they are causing. Here's how it works. They can get rich selling glyphosate, but then the cancer epidemic is the farmer's fault for using the glyphosate. It is the consumer's fault for buying foods contaminated with glyphosate. The billionaires who make and sell glyphosate are not identified. They're not held accountable. They're not prosecuted because that's how they want it, and they have enough money to make that happen. So farmers use the glyphosate, and by doing that, they force people to eat glyphosate. The makers of glyphosate get unimaginably rich, and with all that money, they corrupt government and media to pretend like glyphosate isn't hurting anybody. With billions of dollars, you can easily do things like that. You can pay off media to tell any story you want. You can pay off lawmakers to pass any law you want. You just keep getting richer by poisoning the world with glyphosate. What is destroying the planet is not overpopulation. It is the foundational industries which are plundering resources, manufacturing and distributing poison chemicals and plastics, and tech companies choking the world with wireless pollution. It is the failure to reconcile what is poison and what is okay to make and sell. There's simply no one who is taking responsibility for that problem. It is not your failure. It is that initial decision by a corporate executive to make and sell something that is harmful because they found a way to make people buy it. It is the front end, the beginning points of the supply chain where all those raw materials are mined, extracted, processed, and shipped out to all the manufacturers and commercial markets. You would not have to throw away a plastic bottle if taking responsibility for that problem. It is not your failure. It is that initial decision by a corporate executive to make and sell something that is harmful because they found a way to make people buy it. It is the front end, the beginning points of the supply chain where all those raw materials are mined, extracted, processed, and shipped out to all the manufacturers and commercial markets. You would not have to throw away a plastic bottle if some halfway intelligent industrialist figured out a way to distribute water without using plastic bottles. So where does it start? A lot of it starts with a company called Dow Chemical, where they create bulk polymers and chemicals for industry. Companies like that make billions of tons of toxic plastics and chemicals, and those materials are distributed throughout our commercial supply chains. Nearly every product we buy, the materials, our homes, offices, and vehicles are made of. Why have environmentalists not figured out where the problem originates? Our system is schizophrenic. They tell us to stop polluting with plastic bottles, but they want to keep making money by selling us plastic bottles. There's no consistent underlying morality, reason, or logic. It's just make money now and blame someone else for the consequences later. So what is the business model? They destroy the environment. They make toxic stuff. We buy the toxic stuff. They get rich. We throw away the toxic stuff. Everybody gets sick from toxic stuff, and millions of tons of it wind up floating in the ocean. That's how things work. The more they do it, the more money they make. The more money they make, the more they can do it. Your senator will never dare to pass any law to slow that down because industry pays for his campaigns. He says it's your fault and you need to pay more taxes. Your media will not dare to tell you about the real source of the problem because the industry pays for their advertising. They say it's your fault and you need to recycle. Scientists won't tell you about any problems because the industry gives them grants. They say the evidence of toxicity is inconclusive and therefore there is no problem. So money controls policy and information. You don't get to see the truth or get justice or see common sense. It's just money controlling policy. So that senator has been taking that money for a long time. We now have thousands of laws that do nothing but give tax breaks. subsidies, monopolies, and privileges to the worst polluting companies and industries on the planet, and you will never hear mainstream media tell you that. It is not you and I who are making billions of tons of plastic and chemicals. It is not you and I who put those chemicals and plastics into every product and package on the store shelf where we have no other choice of what to buy. These are not choices we are making, but we're blamed for being consumers. Most of us could get by with renewable, non-toxic products, but those products have not been made available to us. It is not us making the decisions to strip mine entire mountains, to contaminate the atmosphere with geoengineering, pack urban areas with a deadly array of radio transmitters, to mechanize and automate farming with massive tonnage of chemicals, pesticides, and genetically modified mutant foods, or for that matter, go bomb some country so ExxonMobil can take over their oil fields while our politicians tell us we are spreading democracy. Those decisions are made by a handful of very wealthy people who blame everyone but themselves for their crimes. The pollution is not caused when we buy the product or throw away the product. The pollution is caused when they make the product. If we'll buy it, they'll make it. And there's nothing that can stop that or the damage that causes. You can't stop it by recycling or paying more taxes. You can't stop it by protesting, signing a petition, or voting. The media is not going to stop lying and censoring. The politicians are not going to stop making laws for the people who pay for their campaigns. We as citizens have lost our agency. We no longer have any influence or effect on any critical public policy. What can we do to fix that corrupted, broken system? I say nothing. I say these problems are now out of our reach. And this is a win-win for the wealthy elite. They get rich, and when the people get poor, the corner where money is the only driver of policy wherever you look. Public consensus is no longer a factor. Public safety is no longer a factor. Legality is not. So we have to change our tactics, our mission. The only option left is to duck and cover. In this year, 2021, there is potential for major upheaval and trouble. We may see a depression, a currency collapse, a reset. States may try and secede from the Union. There may be war between major world powers, more ongoing pandemics, both real and hoaxes, maybe riots, terrorism, etc. Who knows? And in the USA, we are badly divided politically, and we have no leadership that can unify the country. We are fighting among ourselves, and there are no winners, only losers. So what can we possibly do but duck and cover? Government-sponsored hackers have declared war on each other's cyber infrastructures, so our online services are now constantly being disrupted. Law enforcement is out of control. They think they have the authority to enforce behavior like mask wearing, and they don't bother to intervene in riots. Our money is being printed out of thin air at insane levels. Prices may start skyrocketing, taxes will become unbearable, and when people fall into hardship, crime will start skyrocketing. When disruption and hardship are coming at you from all angles, you need to duck and cover. How do we do that? We have to reduce our dependence on technology, on government, on industry. We have to guard our own health with the understanding that people are doing things to harm us. and that includes some of our doctors and our drug companies. We have to disconnect from control matrices and monitored digital platforms. We have to try not to be tracked, traced, and spied on. We have to get off anything we are addicted to, whether that is drugs, technology, or debt. We have to be skeptical of all media and never stop looking for better information sources. We have to prepare to not be a victim of any possible upcoming financial crises, food shortages, martial law, runaway taxation, and neighbors who go berserk and come over to kill us to steal our canned spinach. We have to look for high nutrition foods without additives and pesticides, maybe grow some ourselves. We need to become independent and teach our children to be independent. We need to look at anything we cannot live without and plan ways to live without it, like planning how to live without utilities, without stores being open, without government assistance. We'll have to try to cancel all unnecessary monthly fees, pay off all debts, save money, invest in property or tangible assets, and get out of Federal Reserve note-based accounts, cash, and instruments. Middle class and poor people will have to learn how to survive on less, while government gets more greedy and desperate, while the wealthy get wealthier, while our media spews out disinformation to cover for those institutions and billionaires who have caused the various calamities that they will blame us for. The one thing that makes this time in history different from all other times is that there is an undercurrent in media that the world is overpopulated with humans. The planet must be cleansed of the garbage known as humans. The Greta Thunberg effect. How dare you be alive? We are entrained now. They are teaching school children to see ourselves as the problem in a very novel brainwashing stunt. So we now no longer need to be consulted as voters and citizens. We can be enforced as criminals. We are criminals for simply existing. This is why they now impose martial law policies when we have a flu pandemic. And this is a global agenda. It's not one country or some evil dictator like it was in the past. Everyone is being conditioned to believe that global scale population reduction is a good thing. We are told to believe that even when we ourselves are the target of reduction in population. We, the people, are for the first time ever not seen as a magnificent conglomeration of human cultures. We are now represented as a blight on the planet. We are made to feel we must step aside to give the planet a break. We must step aside and let the machines take over because they are more efficient and they don't take sick days. We are being marginalized as a species and devalued as individuals. If we are going to stay relevant or perhaps even survive, we are going to have to work at it. We will have to make ourselves valuable to each other and avoid getting caught up in depopulation, euthanasia, transhumanism, genetic manipulation, genocide, mass surveillance, technological dependence, institutional neglect, and abuse by our officials as they order us to lock down, isolate, abandon our jobs and our businesses. To not be harmed by all of that will take focused and determined effort. We'll have to think for ourselves and stop taking orders from idiot governors and mayors. We'll have to develop our own real-world communities where we can associate and transact with other people who understand the need to be independent and self-sufficient and the need to keep our own private economies and currencies working, and the need, above all, to value ourselves as individuals and as a species. You may have noticed in the lockdowns and the pandemics, we're being divided. Old friends and even family members are at odds now how to deal with current events. But human beings must have community. As the world is now changing so rapidly around us, we will lose friendships and start new ones. That cannot be avoided, and we should not make the mistake of living in the rearview mirror and thinking things will always be the same. In this atmosphere of depopulation and devaluing of human life, we can no longer rely on our institutions and political bodies to look after us. we must be and build the world we want to live in.